Hi, my name is Thomas. Every day, I take the same commuter train to work. Same tracks, same stops, same sleepy passengers pretending to read newspapers or scrolling endlessly through their phones. Nothing ever changes on that ride. Until one morning, it did. We slowed down in the middle of nowhere. I thought maybe there was an issue on the line, but then the brakes screeched and the train came to a complete stop. The intercom buzzed with static, and on the electronic display above the doors appeared a name I had never seen before. Harrow's End. The train doors slid open with a metallic hiss. At first, I thought it was some kind of prank, maybe a glitch in the system. I'd memorized every stop on this route years ago. Harrow's End had never been one of them. And yet, the platform stretched out in the pale morning light, its cracked tiles glowing faintly under old iron lamps. The letters HARROWSEND gleamed in faded brass across the station sign. People around me stood without hesitation, gathering their bags, brushing off coats, and stepping out as if this were nothing unusual. Nobody questioned it. Not a single person looked confused. I stayed seated, gripping the edge of my bag. My mind screamed, "Stay on the train. This isn't right." But at the same time, an invisible weight pressed against me, tugging at my chest, urging me forward. I tried to resist. Truly I did. But the more passengers left, the more I felt like I didn't have a choice. My legs carried me to the door almost against my will. The moment my shoes touched the cracked cement of the platform, a chill ran through my body, sharp and final, like I had just crossed into a place I was never meant to enter. Behind me, the train door shut. The carriages hummed with life, filled with staring faces, and then, without a single sound of departure, the train simply wasn't there anymore. The tracks stretched into empty fog. I was alone at Harrow's End. The platform led to a narrow staircase, its stone steps slick with moisture. A rusted iron gate at the top creaked as I pushed it open, and a heavy fog spilled in like a living thing. The street beyond stretched into a silence I can't compare to anything else. Not peaceful silence, not the kind you find in the countryside. This was a smothering, suffocating quiet that pressed against my ears, making even my own breath sound wrong. Rows of buildings lined both sides of the street. They had the architecture of another era, Victorian brickwork, sagging gables, broken shutters. Windows were caked in grime. Yet when I looked closer, I saw a light flickering faintly behind the glass. A golden glow, warm and inviting. And yet, no sound came from within. I started walking, my footsteps echoing in a way that made me think the road had been waiting for me. The fog seemed to coil tighter the further I went, curling against my ankles, rising toward my knees. The lamps overhead buzzed weakly, their halos smearing into the mist. I tried the first door I saw. It was locked. Another door creaked slightly open, but when I pushed it, the hinges screamed and the room beyond was empty. Completely empty. No furniture, no dust, not even a smell. Just walls, bare and raw, as though nobody had ever lived there. But still, those glowing windows burned in the distance. Someone or something had to be behind them. I whispered aloud, more to myself than anyone else. "Hello, is anyone here?" The fog carried my voice away instantly. I might as well have spoken into a pillow. A shiver crawled up my spine. That was when I noticed the footprints. They trailed ahead of me in the thin layer of moisture on the pavement. Dozens of them, crisscrossing, overlapping, some fresh, some old, all leading deeper into the fog. And I swear I heard movement ahead. A shuffle, a drag. Too soft to be footsteps. Too human to be anything else. I froze, my heart hammering, because the lights in the windows suddenly flickered synchronously all down the street, as if the town had just realized I was here. The shuffle grew clearer as I pressed deeper into the fog. My body screamed at me to turn back, but the station was gone. All that remained was the road stretching forward, and those glowing windows watching me like unblinking eyes. Then I saw them, figures moving through the mist. At first, I thought they were ordinary townsfolk, maybe commuters like me who had stepped off the train. But as they drew nearer, something about them made my stomach knot. They walked slowly, their heads bowed low as if studying the ground. None of them spoke. Their faces were pale, drained of all color, lips pressed tight, eyes half closed. They seemed unfinished, like sketches of people blurred around the edges. One woman brushed past me, the hem of her long dress dragging across the wet cobblestones. She didn't look up, not even when my shoulder nearly bumped hers. I forced myself to ask, "Excuse me, how do I get back to the station?" No answer, not even a twitch of recognition. I tried again louder. "Please, I need to leave." That was when she stopped, her head tilted, sharp and unnatural, as though her neck didn't quite bend the way it should. Slowly, her eyes met mine. They were gray, clouded like smoke trapped under glass. Her lips parted, and in a breath so thin it almost wasn't there, she whispered, "There is no leaving. Not once you stepped off." My throat tightened. "What do you mean?" I managed. Her eyes widened, as though the words pained her. She leaned closer until I could smell damp earth on her skin, until her whisper curled directly into my ear. "We've all stayed. We've all lost something. And now we belong." She turned away as if the conversation had never happened, her body folding back into the quiet procession of bowed heads. I stood frozen, heart pounding, until I noticed that all of them, the whole gray parade of locals, had stopped walking. Every head turned toward me in eerie unison. And though none of them spoke, I felt the answer burning in my mind, clear as day. I wasn't supposed to leave either. The fog grew thicker as the day dimmed. Or maybe the sun had never been here at all. It was hard to tell. One moment the lamps flickered against the gray daylight. The next the world seemed to sink into a heavy, unnatural dusk. The locals melted back into the mist, vanishing as if they'd never existed. Their pale outlines dissolved, leaving me standing alone on the cobblestones. I told myself I should find shelter, but every building I tried was the same, doors locked tight, windows glowing but unreachable. By the time true night fell, the lamps along the street were the only light left. And that's when I began to hear it. A rustling, low and distant at first, then closer, like something dragging itself through wet grass. I turned a corner and froze. Shapes were moving in the fog, not like the gray townsfolk. These things were taller, hunched, their limbs far too long. Their arms swung low, fingers brushing the ground. They had no faces, just smooth expanses of pale skin where features should have been. I backed against a wall, barely breathing. One of them stopped. Its head, or what should have been its head, tilted toward me, as if it could smell me in the dark. Then, slowly, it turned and slipped into a nearby house. The door creaked open by itself, and as soon as the figure entered, the glowing window flared brighter. That was when I heard it murmurs. Dozens of whispers, rising and falling like a prayer. A rhythmic knocking followed, soft at first, then harder, faster, until it sounded like fists pounding against wood. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping on the uneven stones. All around me, other faceless figures were emerging from the fog, drifting toward the houses. One by one, they entered, and one by one, the windows lit up brighter, voices joining the chorus of whispers and knocks. I clamped my hands over my ears, but it didn't help. The sound wasn't just noise, it was inside me, crawling through my skull, rattling against my bones. I wanted to scream, and that's when I realized some of the whispers were calling my name. "Thomas! Thomas!" I ran. I didn't care where. Any direction was better than standing there while those faceless things whisper my name. My shoes scraped against the slick stones, my breath coming in ragged bursts. The fog seemed alive now, wrapping tighter, pushing me toward streets I didn't choose. That was when I saw him. An old man sat on the steps of a crumbling townhouse, his posture hunched, his face pale under the jaundiced glow of a lamppost. Unlike the others, he lifted his head when I passed. His eyes locked on mine with startling clarity, as though he'd been waiting for me. "You shouldn't have stepped off," he said, his voice rasping but steady. "I didn't mean to," I shouted. My voice cracked, but I didn't care. I just want to get back to the station. "Please tell me how." The old man shook his head slowly. "There is no back. Not once you've crossed onto this ground." I wanted to argue, to scream at him, but the weight in his voice told me he wasn't lying. "What is this place?" I demanded. He motioned for me to sit. Against all reason, I did. My knees buckled under me as I sank onto the cold step beside him. "This is Harrow's End," he whispered, as if speaking the name too loudly might wake something. "A place that shouldn't exist, yet does. It's where the lost come. Not the lost in body, no, the lost in spirit. The ones who dropped something behind in life, something too heavy to carry, too painful to let go." His words clawed into me, and though I wanted to reject them, something in my chest ached with recognition. "The town takes such people," he went on. "It draws them here. And once you arrive, you don't leave. Not really. You fade into the others. You walk with your head down, silent, until you're nothing more than a shadow waiting for the night." I swallowed hard, shaking my head. "That's not me. I didn't lose anything. I didn't." The old man turned to me sharply, eyes glinting like whetstone. "Everyone has lost something. The question is, do you remember what it was?" The whispers in the fog rose again. The faceless shapes had vanished into the houses, but their murmurs remained. Some of them still breathed my name. I pressed my palms to my ears, trembling. "I have to get out," I said, though my voice sounded hollow. The old man gave me a look both pitying and resigned. "You'll try. Everyone does. But in the end, the town always wins." He stood with difficulty, his bones creaking like old timber. Then, with a final glance over his shoulder, he melted into the fog, leaving me alone. Alone, except for the chorus of whispers that now spoke not just my name, but fragments of my past. Things I had buried, things I had lost. I don't remember deciding to run, only the sudden motion of my legs carrying me back through the fog-choked streets. My breath burned, my heart slammed against my ribs, and all I could think was, the station. The station has to still be there. The whispers chased me. Not from behind. No, they pressed in from everywhere. From the glowing windows, from the cracks in the cobblestones, from the fog itself. My own name, repeated over and over, braided with words I almost recognized. Snatches of memories I didn't want to face. Then, like a miracle, I saw it. The staircase, the rusted gate, the cracked tiles of the platform, and waiting on the tracks, the train. Its doors stood closed, the yellow carriage lights glowing warm and inviting, just like always. Through the windows I could see people seated, heads bowed, hands folded. My fellow commuters. Relief flooded me, so hard it hurt. I stumbled up the steps, slammed against the gate, and nearly collapsed onto the platform. The train was real. It was still here. I sprinted for the nearest door. My hand slammed against the button to open it. Nothing. I hit again. Harder. The mechanism didn't respond. The door was sealed shut. Inside, the passengers slowly raised their heads. Their faces were pale, eyes sunken, skin stretched too thin, just like the silent townsfolk in the streets. "No," I whispered, my breath fogged against the glass as I pounded with my fists. "Open. Please open." Their gazes fixed on me in perfect unison. Their lips didn't move, but their voices filled my skull, layered and endless. "You belong here now." My knees buckled. I slid down the glass, choking on sobs I hadn't realized were tearing out of me. Then I noticed something that froze the blood in my veins. Among the pale faces pressed to the window, staring back at me, was my own. A perfect reflection of myself, sitting quietly in a seat, hands folded, head tilted just slightly, as if waiting. When our eyes met, the copy of me smiled. The doors hissed. For one breathless moment, I thought they were opening, but no. The sound came from the fog behind me, and when I turned, the faceless figures were already stepping onto the platform. The platform stretched like a coffin lid beneath my feet, cracked tiles glistening under dim yellow lamps. The faceless figures emerged from the fog in slow, deliberate steps. Their limbs scraped against the ground as though they'd forgotten how to walk properly, each movement a grotesque imitation of humanity. I pressed my back to the cold train door, pounding one last time. The reflection of myself on the other side leaned forward, resting his palm against the glass exactly where mine struck. His eyes locked on mine, filled with something between pity and hunger. The faceless ones closed in. They didn't rush me. They didn't need to. Every step seemed to rot the air, the whispers growing louder until I couldn't tell if they were outside my head or inside. Thomas! Thomas, stay! The glowing windows of the town pulsed like beating hearts in the distance, each one synchronized with my pulse. I realized then what the old man had meant. The town wasn't just a place. It was a trap that breathed, lured, consumed. One of the faceless creatures reached the edge of the platform. It bent its elongated frame and stretched its hand toward me. The fingers were too many, at least 6, each one long and bone-pale. They twitched as though tasting the air. I screamed, hurling myself sideways, narrowly missing its grasp. My bag tore off my shoulder, tumbling across the platform into the mist. The whispering stopped instantly. All at once, every faceless head turned toward the fallen bag. Their attention left me like a physical weight lifting off my chest. My bag, my stupid work bag. Inside it, my notebook, the one filled with pages I never showed anyone. Pages where I had written her name over and over again. Emma. Her absence slammed into me like a train. The thing I'd buried. The thing I'd lost. The whispers rose again, but now they were different. Clearer. They weren't calling my name anymore. They were calling hers. Emma. Emma. I fell to my knees, clutching my skull. My reflection on the train window tilted his head, watching me with quiet fascination. And the faceless figures? They didn't come closer. They were waiting. The whispers drilled into me, pulling at memories I'd tried for years to bury. Emma. I saw her face so clearly it hurt. Soft smile, hair always falling into her eyes no matter how many times she brushed it back. I saw the train rides we used to share, back when mornings weren't so heavy, when laughter felt natural. And then, flashes of the night, everything ended. The argument. The rain. Her hands slipping from mine as she turned away, stepping off the curb. I screamed, clutching my chest, but the memory didn't stop. I saw the headlights, the horn that came too late, the stillness afterward broken only by the sound of my own sobbing. The fog around Harrow's End pulsed with that memory, drinking it in, replaying it for me with merciless clarity. That was it. That was what I had lost. And now the town had it too. The faceless figures loomed at the edge of the platform, heads tilted as if savoring my pain. Every glowing window in the distance flickered in rhythm with my heart, brightening with every ragged breath. Why are you showing me this? I shouted into the mist, my voice raw. Why can't you just let me go? The reflection of myself inside the train leaned closer to the glass, lips curling into that same thin smile. And though it didn't move its mouth, I heard the words as clear as if whispered in my ear. Because you never left her, and now you never will. The weight of the truth crushed me. Maybe that was why my legs gave out. Maybe that was why I didn't resist when one of the faceless figures stretched its long arm toward me again, this time brushing its cold fingers against my sleeve. The touch wasn't painful. It was worse. It was familiar. For a split second, I could swear I felt Emma's hand there. The whispers rose into a deafening chorus. Not just her name, not just mine, but every regret I'd ever carried, every thought I'd shoved down, every failure I'd hoped time would erase. The town wasn't punishing me. It was keeping me, feeding off what I could never let go of. And deep down, I realized something horrifying. Part of me didn't want to fight anymore. The faceless figure's hand lingered on my sleeve, its fingers twitching against the fabric as though trying to draw something out of me. I could barely breathe. The fog pressed tighter, the whispers burrowed deeper, and the glow from the train windows painted everything in sickly gold. Somewhere beneath all of it, a thought clawed its way up through my despair. If I don't fight now, I'll never fight again. I wrenched myself free, stumbling backward until my spine slammed against the train door. The reflection of myself inside smiled wider, his lips finally moving. I couldn't hear the words, but I knew exactly what he said. Stay. I bare my teeth like an animal. No. The word tasted foreign. Weak. But it was mine. The faceless shapes recoiled slightly, their heads tilting in confusion. The whispers faltered, as though the town itself hadn't expected defiance. That hesitation was my only chance. I grabbed the strap of my bag from where it had fallen on the platform. The notebook inside throbbed like a living thing, as if the name written across its pages, Emma, over and over again, was the very tether binding me here. With shaking hands, I pulled it free. The fog pulsed. The whispers grew frantic. The faceless ones inched closer, desperate now, their long limbs trembling with urgency. My reflection inside the train slammed its palm against the glass. Its smile stretched into something feral. I flipped the notebook open. Page after page of her name stared back at me, scrawled in ink, scratched in pencil, sometimes nearly gouged into the paper. Obsession. Grief. Chains I had built myself. Tears blurred my vision. My hand tightened, and then, with a scream that tore out of me like fire, I hurled the notebook into the fog. For a moment, silence. The whispers cut off mid-breath. The faceless figures froze, arms twitching uselessly in the air. The glowing windows across the town flickered violently, dimming, surging, then dimming again like candles in a storm. I turned back to the train. The reflection of me was gone. The door hissed. It was opening. I staggered forward, heart in my throat, hope flaring for the first time since this nightmare began. Only for the door to open not into the familiar warm carriage, but into an abyss of blackness. A tunnel with no light, no sound, no end. And from that darkness, something breathed. Slow, patient, waiting for me to step inside. I froze at the edge of the train door. The darkness beyond swallowed the light from the platform. My hand shook, my legs felt like lead, yet something inside me urged me forward. The fog behind me rolled and twisted, carrying the faint whispers one last time. Thomas! Thomas! I could still hear them calling, but now they were distant. Distant enough that I could almost convince myself they didn't matter anymore. Almost. My heart hammered in my chest as I realized the truth. The town hadn't trapped me because it was evil. It trapped me because I had clung to something I couldn't let go. Emma, my grief, my regrets. All of it had made me part of Harrow's End, whether I wanted it or not. I swallowed hard, staring into the abyss. The darkness wasn't threatening. It wasn't welcoming. It was neutral, waiting, patient. I had two options: step into the darkness and risk losing myself forever, leaving behind what I loved and feared all at once, or stay on the platform, trapped forever with the faceless figures, a prisoner of my own unresolved grief. My fingers grazed the edge of the notebook, now lying in the fog. For a fleeting second, I imagined taking it, flipping through her name one last time, letting the grief anchor me. And then I let it go. I stepped forward. The darkness closed around me like water. I felt no fear, no hope, only the endless sensation of falling. The train seemed to stretch infinitely, the world bending and twisting with every heartbeat. Somewhere far behind, the fog of Harrow's End curled over the platform, windows flickering with faint golden light. The whispers faded into nothing. I could no longer hear my name. I could no longer see my reflection. And yet, I was moving. I don't know how long I fell. Seconds? Hours? Days? Time had no meaning. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. Harrow's End had not taken me. Not entirely. I was leaving. And if I ever make it back to the world I once knew, I will never take a train again without remembering that some stations, some places, exist only to test you, to see what you're willing to let go. Because some losses are too heavy to carry, but some, if released, can set you free.